Welcome to the Compassion Speak podcast with Allison, Chaplain, energy worker, teacher, super incredible guy, angel, living, walking, breathing, sharing his wisdom with you, and me. I'm Cleo. I'm an energy worker, and today we are here to talk about divorce energy. When I talk about divorce energy, I'm not talking about getting divorced from your spouse right now. This is not like advice. This is not a sign. Okay. What we're talking about is divorce energy. So I had a recent experience where I was trying to be a part of an organization, and every week for 6 months, I was told, "You're fired." And I would go home crying, and just be like, "Oh my God." And the next day, they would call me and say, "Well, you can come back if you do this differently." And I would say, "Absolutely, I will do anything, whatever it is. I get it. I am definitely a work in progress. I see it. I get it. I understand. I want to be different. I want to be better. This is my opportunity to change and grow and be better." And so I would go back, and they would be very patient and kind, and then a week later, I would not have done anything that I would consider to be out of the ordinary, and I would get the same thing. "I'm sorry, we can't work with you. This is impossible. You're fired." And eventually, I literally got to the point where I was like, rejection is not real. There is nothing real here because these people are going to ask me to come back tomorrow. In fact, they might ask me to come back in 5 minutes. Like, this just keeps happening. Like, what is this? How am I creating this pattern over and over and over again? And the pattern did not end until an angel who was with me said, "Cleo, let's just quit. You've got fired again. I don't even want to tell you the news. Let's just leave." And I said, "Okay, you know what? We haven't tried that yet. And this is sure isn't working. So let's try that. Just see what happens." And I was angry. I was really angry for a whole day. And I had this whole rebirth of my worth, of what my goals are, of what is important to me, of all of my personal values, as opposed to trying to constantly make somebody else happy or constantly be defined by some arbitrary list of rules that I didn't even understand. Many times I would get, fired for something that I was like, why is that a rule exactly? Like, what is that? And they would just be like, "No, you really don't understand, do you?" And as soon as I was gone, I was like, "Wow, maybe this just wasn't a good fit for me. Maybe this is just ridiculous. Maybe this is the best thing that could have happened. Maybe this is the experience that was trying to happen for 6 months that I have been avoiding all this time."
Hmm. Yes. I do feel your identity in this story. And when life is happening to us, those are just biographical details. However, we if we approach it with reverence, with a desire of wanting to get to the heart of the matter, what's trying to surface, what's trying to emerge, that examination brings us into our identity. We can recognize and know it because it is part of our truth and why we are here. If I could share something with you,
Yeah.
I ran across this quote earlier this week and it really resonated with me. This is from um, Bill Stafford. "The things that you don't have to say make you rich. Saying the things you don't have to say weakens your talk. Hearing the things you don't need to hear dulls your hearing. The things you know before you hear are your truth and why you are here. So that knowing that comes from within the struggle of life happening to you is a beautiful description of your resolve and why you're here. It points to your purpose.
I think this is so important. One of the things that happens a lot in when people consult me is that they want to know what their angels have for them, directions, what's right for them, which way to go. They want advice. And many times, um, the angels don't want to give it because they want that person to go with what is their personal truth. And when that person goes with their personal truth, then the angels will support it. The angels want to be the muscle behind your direction. But only we, when we access our deep personal wisdom, can really know what the direction is that we want to go in. That's the only time that we can actually be the creator of our life. Otherwise, we're just bouncing off somebody else all the time.
Good, good example and observation. I think that the way that I access it has really kind of emphasized that struggle between head and heart. When I approach something with reverence, with this space of curiosity, discovery, and a desire to connect with it, a desire to be in relationship to what's going on, then what I discover um, includes that timeliness that comes from love, that comes from beauty, that reveals that truth in a way that's relevant and time sensitive. And oftentimes it's in providing a safe and silent space for others to discover that truth. And then there are also times when speaking that truth becomes a timely way of hearing what is already going on in someone's experience. So I really liked how you put that, Cleo.
This is so fascinating. I remember being your student in class and thinking, how does Sean do it? Like, you have this way of, in a painful conversation, of just being silent, and the entire room changes. And
Hmm.
today I know that it is exactly what you just described. That that Sean has the ability to, when he is really, that is his life, that's the process of living to Sean. That life to Sean is, here comes this piece of information or this moment, and now I will hold it in my heart and sit with it, and then respond as even, um, from the angel within. So, he describes that as being in his heart. And I describe that as really being in a whole nother consciousness. I think we all have
Hmm.
kind of our animal consciousness, and our society has really developed this to a huge degree. This competitive, aggressive. I mean, I don't know about you, but every day on Facebook, I get 100 ads for how to be a better competitor at whatever it is, whether it's business or blogging or at work, how to be more um, aggressive and empowered in relationships, all these things that are very much all about us being in our animal intelligence, where it's fight or lose, win or lose, scarcity thinking, very much about my identity is determined by how much I can um, grab things instead of being from a completely different intelligence, which is patient, accepting, kind, loving, and actually has the capacity for understanding beyond our actual intellect. Our logic can only take us so far before the the vehicle can't go any further. And, when we take logic into our relationships, we can argue forever how we've been wronged, how this doesn't make sense, how we need to win, how we need to be right, how we need to fix this, how we need to manage this. And yet, if we step into, I think, what you're describing, the heart space, this patient intelligence, which, every faith has a description of. Buddhism talks about it as being your Buddha nature, that everyone has Buddha nature all the time. And that when we spend enough time in silence, we access that perspective and we can live our lives from that perspective where we don't have to be reactive, where we can be patient and loving.
Yeah. I was first introduced to this as a child through the teachings of Jesus and through Christianity. And it took me decades to understand that it was not a head experience, it wasn't something analytical to process, that it was actually a relationship that changed how I showed up and what was important. In Plato, in the Symposium, he talks about the greatest pleasures of a human being is to be the midwife to the birthing of a soul in another person. And this
Wow.
identification and expression of love is my passion and why I'm here. You can see it emerge, spring forth, become vibrant. We were talking before our podcast about Tina Turner. And I think she's a brilliant example of this, that despite the abuse, despite what happened, how life happened to her, that her exploration and discovery of who she was in and because of those experiences isolated the truth and the resolve that impacted all of our lives by her having the courage to face her fears and create her passions. And really, that midwifing of that soul in the other person is a powerful experience that happens every day. And so we're just trying to capture it and not just see how it's taken place every day, but to connect it to the mystical, the um, the awe and wonder that feeds it, that sustains it. And then we can create it with the tools and the opportunities of this day.
This is a great point. How do we maintain it, right? It is so challenging. I think that, particularly when we're around other people who are completely about their analytical intelligence, or when we're around people who are always competitive, it can be really hard to maintain, especially if it's new, maintain this very tender, soft understanding and to keep ourselves sort of like, maybe you could imagine it like being the gears of a car, right? First gear gets you going, and second gear is you're working towards something, and then third gear you're starting to really, this is a dated conversation. I can't say gears because nobody does that anymore, can I? Can I say gears? Bicycles.
Yeah,
Bicycles have
you
gears.
can say gears because, yes. Well, no, and gears also are found in transmissions, and my van has had 5 of them. So I have a lot of experience in transitions lately. Um, one of the things that I find very fascinating is that when you switch from the place of the heart, you move into this partnership of what's going on. And when we approach it with reverence, with that desire to know it, to see our truth in what is going on around us and be fed by that truth, I think it changes how things function and what we have access to. And we have a preoccupation in our culture to focus on, um, let's see, the truth, cause and effect, things that we can measure in the third dimension. However, I don't think that we spend so much time exploring the possibilities and thinking along the way of possibilities is a different dimension altogether. And if those are constant companions, those possibilities always being around us and living as another option, then we've simply just chosen one possible outcome or journey of all that it's possible. And we can switch back and forth between them very fluently. It's just in a different way of thinking and using our imagination.
I love the idea that possibility is the result of really staying in that peaceful place and that peaceful understanding within us, keeping it in our heart, keeping ourselves in that very gentle intelligence. Um, I love the idea that, you know, that analytical mind doesn't see things that way. The analytical mind is all about there's one right answer and I have to find it. And it has very limited understanding of what the options are. It is very much based on everything that has happened in the past. And it has very little imagination when it comes to the ego, right? It can't kind of imagine that a divorce could be a good thing. It can't kind of imagine that um, and if it does imagine that divorce is a good thing, it very much is all about defining things. Here is the line. There is them. This is me. These are
Mm-hmm.
concrete ideas, right? And for anyone who has experienced divorce, what happens? You can't love again, right? There's if we take that change, that moment of transition, here's the line. I am choosing now. This is me over here and this is them over there and I am
Yes.
not taking this anymore. And oh my gosh, who am I all this time? What has been going on? If we take that moment and turn it into I'm completely, oh my God, someone's trying to give me macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is what he had. He wanted macaroni and cheese every day. I hate macaroni and cheese. This is who I am. I am this. Right. We turn into this angry creature who is building this, making the wall bigger and bigger and bigger, and attaching definitions to whatever has come before instead of literally recognizing that they are fine, that we are fine, that this is, yeah, it's a big decision. It's a big decision. It's a big decision to build from. It's not a big decision
Yeah.
to start taking that marker and using, I think that our logical brain is desperate to define things and put them in boxes and write things off in order to feel safe, in order to feel in control, right?
Yes. Well, and we have to remind ourselves that what we know to be true and how we identify that truth is seen in the beauty around us, in the love that we experience, in the desire for service, and the compassion that shifts our attention to different priorities. And that happens when we can access that place inside of us, that place where nothing can um, penetrate. There's a space inside of you that no one can touch, that no wound can inflict by life. Or let me start over again. There is a
No
place
life can
inside of you.
inflict a wound. Yes. Keep going, keep
There you
going.
go.
This is perfect.
Yes.
Keep going.
Um, okay, so there is a place inside of you that no one can touch, that no wound inflicted by life can diminish or distort. This place of beauty is a place where the soul resides, a place where your knowing and your truth is identified, and what you see around you reflects your identity. That beauty that is inside of you erupts in what you respond to from life. And those are the wells that we are digging within the landscape of suffering and pain. And so we're encouraging that exploration and that discovery and that curiosity.
So Buddhism talks about finding exactly that resource within us in meditation. And how do you find that space? I know you have your Christian um, training, and then you also have mystical training. So why don't you talk about a little bit about
Mhm.
both? How do you find it in both of those?
Hmm. Well, the first thing that comes to mind as far as the Christian part of the experience is being able to focus on the promises, the things that have been, that are standards throughout life and are examples of those promises in action every day, things that we can count on. Another part of it is recognizing that inspiration, that wisdom that is whispered by the divine is an opportunity for me to create in what I am doing in this day. And that those opportunities show up as people cross my path. And during the activities, how I show up changes as I become aware of the potential. And um, and I think that quote, seize the day, really comes from that passion that recognizes the opportunity.
I love that. So talk some about your mystical training. Like, what's an exercise that you would offer to someone who is trying
Hmm.
to find that silent place in themselves?
Hmm. At first, I look at the chatter that goes on in meditation as I try to quiet myself. And through training, through practice, I remind myself that, oh, wait, I'm quiet, so I need to remember my lists of things to do and the things that I have not completed. And so what's behind that? Um, what's behind that distraction are the little truths and um, discoveries that come from that silence and stillness. And as I set aside those distractions and set different or go deeper into that stillness and silence, I'm overwhelmed by this peace and this serenity. And it not only is relaxing, but it stimulates thoughts that I have um, not explored fully. And that place of discovery, that place of inspiration and wisdom is um, is very motivating and passionate. And I find that when I approach life from that place of reverence, that how I show up and what I'm able to do is met with a host of support for where I'm going.
That is super cool. You said something in there that I thought was really interesting. Sometimes people think that if you attain like a spiritual peace, that you don't enjoy things as much. That it's so there's kind of I think speaking from my experience, many times when I would first enter a kind of understanding like that, I would have this overwhelming sense of boredom because we feel like life is supposed to be this emotional cornucopia. And then we walk into this space of peace, and it's like it's boring. It's very, very quiet. I loved what you said about it. It's a place of joy, it's a place of really
Hmm.
rich joy. Um, Talk some about your experience with that because I know that people describe it in different ways.
Yeah. Well, for myself, that silence began with abandonment, with punishment, and were places that I avoided because I would have to um, my disconnection, my pain, my suffering. I was trying to avoid that silence. When I started to make friends with that silence, I started recognizing my identity within those experiences. And as that rapport continued to build, as my trust in myself continued to expand and deepen, I started recognizing that that silence was restorative, rejuvenating, peaceful, loving. It was a place where I could explore forgiveness and a place where I could examine that neutrality, where I can observe what is going on without having to assign meaning or morality to it. That I could use those experiences in brand new ways because I hadn't approached them from that perspective before.
Mhm. Yeah, this is another thing I think that I'm so glad you brought that up because when my husband and I started meditating when we were teenagers and we went to a Buddhist temple and that was the first thing we did was sitting meditation and I found it really made my depression worse. And at first I really enjoyed it and then over the years it just got to really be this thing that would just expand my depression. And I loved John O'Donohue says something about this. He says, when you go into the silence, whatever you bring with you is what you're going to find. And
Mm-hmm.
that if you go into the silence having faith that you will find love and offering love, you will find your love a hundredfold. And if you go
Mm-hmm.
into the silence with your worst fears hanging over your head, then that's what you'll find a hundredfold. And I love that he has such an incredibly beautiful way of giving us permission to still have that sacred space and to have responsibility for what our experience is when we go there. And giving us the tool to say it's okay to just walk in with the idea that it's gonna be good and it'll be good.
Well, and perhaps that can be a recognition of that reverence, that place of inspiration. When we enter into it, there's a greater degree of responsibility and accountability. There's a desire for you to meet the opportunities that it is offering. So here's an interesting perspective. There's a lot of emphasis on us discovering the universe, us discovering God, or that divine expression in each other. However, how would it shift if that divine expression, the God of your heart, is pursuing you, is seeking you out, is wanting for your attention to be surprised when you discover it already in motion. It's a different
Yeah.
experience altogether. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's found in places of a whisper,
Mhm.
you know, a surprised pause, something we consider, or something that we doubt, only to discover what it truly is through identifying with it, through knowing it before we hear it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, the things you know before you hear them are your truth and why you are here.
Yeah. Who said that quote again? What's that from again?
That's that's Bill Stafford. I'm not exactly sure which of his writings it's in, but
Okay.
I'll say the whole thing again. The things that you do not have to say make you rich. Saying the things you don't have to say weakens your talk. Hearing the things you don't need to hear dulls your hearing. The things you know before you hear them are your truth and why you are here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chaplain Sean Allison. So appreciate it.
Mm,
And looking
my
forward
pleasure.
to our next episode next week, live on Facebook and here on YouTube. Also, do you have any offerings coming up, Sean?
Let's see, we have a men's group that is going to be next Thursday from 6 to 7 Mountain Time. We have um, meditation classes coming up, and um, yep, we'll post them below where this is being. Um,
Okay.
we'll
Is there a
post them
website people
below
can
the.
go to where they can reach you?
Yes, you can reach it at anitadestino.com and whenyoursidewalkends.com.
Excellent. Awesome. And I am offering monthly angel channelings with angel healings. They're group sessions. They're vibrant. They're amazing. They're fun. They're beautiful. Melt away all your stress, unhappiness, icky patterns, and icky energy with beautiful angels to help you. And I can be found at cleobuchanan.com. And I look forward to seeing you there. Bye, Sean.
All right. Thank you, Cleo, for this time. Bye.
Thank, thank you.